Welcome to the channel. My name is Pokerado, and I am here to bring you a long format video on Sword and Shield tier list. Basically, how do I think these sets are going to go in the future? Now, when doing this tier list, I want to make a couple things clear here. Number one, this is just my opinion. I have been wrong as oftentimes as I have been right, and things can change in an instant and can change the popularity of a set years down the road. Just look at the Sun and Moon full art trainers that took off crazy because of all the Japanese waifu hunters that, now all the full art cards that went from like $5, now they're like $50. It went crazy because of that, and I can't predict those kinds of things. We're just going to look at the sets in general, how much they were printed, kind of the hits inside, their pull rates, and how I think they're going to do long-term for collectors and quote-unquote Pokemon investing. Don't invest in Pokemon. It's a bad time. You're better off with the stock market. It's less crazy. But yeah, let's just take a look at the tier list here and go through the cards and give my thoughts about it. Okay, so here is the lovely tier list thing with like 15 freaking ads playing at once. Oh, I miss the days where the tier list didn't have all this. But first we have Sword and Shield. And Sword and Shield was the first one in the Sword and Shield TCG to release, and I'm going to put it here at C tier. Now, there's a reason why it's lower here. Typically, the first release in Generations is the lowest or lower in the Generations. Look at Diamond and Pearl base, look at EX Ruby and Sapphire, and then compare those to later releases. Black and White's a prime example. But Sword and Shield is not probably the worst release in the Sword and Shield era, because it actually has a lot of good cards and a lot of fan favorites in its list here. When you look at the ultra rares, you have things such as Cramorant, Snorlax, you have Marnie here, you have Lapras, you have Snorlax VMAX, you have Zacian and Zamazenta, both of which were very playable when this set came out, and were actually dominating for a while in the TCG. I think this set's going to be a solid set. I think it was just printed quite a bit, as every base set is. Most people have this set completed, most people have, or at least all the big cards in this set. I think I have all the big cards in this set, I just don't have it mastered. But it will probably have good long-term with the bigger hit cards in here, the Zacian and the Zamazenta. Its pull rates were not like super through the roof in comparison to later sets. The rainbows were probably the hardest to pull out of this. The golds were the second hardest, and then the full arts were obviously third. But I think it's a really good set, and I would put it solidly here at C. Next up is Rebel Clash, and honestly, I'm very mixed on this set. It also has a couple fan favorites in here with the melodic, with things like Inteleon, Dragapult, you can argue Boss's Orders, Sonya, but it just doesn't have the same impact that Sword and Shield did. I think this set was largely forgotten by the Pokemon community. There were not a lot of things in here that were TCG meta relevant at the time. I mean, there were a few things you could do with this, but ultimately Sword and Shield, the Zacian decks were just a lot better. The pull rates on this were about the same as Sword and Shield, so it's not a set that I would put in D, but it's definitely not above Sword and Shield. It's not like the worst set of the series, but I'm going to put it right here as a solid C. It was also printed quite a bit. You saw this in a lot of promo boxes throughout the years. Yeah, I wouldn't put it above Sword and Shield, but it's definitely not a D tier set. Those cards will have some pretty good long-term value increases, or, in my opinion. We'll see how they do. Now we have Darkness Ablaze. Now, Darkness Ablaze, when this set came out, is when the craze for Pokemon started. And it did have a lot of playable cards, and it did have a couple big hitters. Now, I'm going to say this carefully. A couple big hitters. The biggest hitter in this for a long time was actually a fairly common card. It was the Charizard VMAX right here. And it was just because it was Charizard that everybody was going crazy for this set. This thing at one point was near $200 for a VMAX, which is insane, and now it's back down to $20. I think this set has crashed tremendously, and it just doesn't have the big hits to really carry it forward. I mean, you have Salamence here, you have Crobat, you have Houndoom, but all of these were pretty easy to pull. The full art trainers are very, very cheap. The rainbows are very, very cheap outside of like the Salamence. The golds are just nothing. Honestly, this is probably going to be remembered as one of the worst releases in Pokemon and one of the most overhyped releases in Pokemon, because it came out right in the smack dab of 2020, right when that craze was really going on. So Honestly, I think this is going to be the worst set and the worst release, and it's going to remain that way for a very long time unless something happens to pull up one of its popular cards and make it just go crazy. Next up is Champion's Path. Now, Champion's Path was a little bit better, but remember, this was also a mini set, so it was kind of easier to pull things on this. I think this was probably the easiest thing to pull cards out of, with exception of the Charizard Rainbow, which I'm still missing from my master set. This is the only card I'm missing from this set. I just got to break down and get it. And the Charizard V. These also skyrocketed in price. This card in particular is a PSA 10 on release, was selling for $4,000. And these prices here, I think it's almost $100 now for an ungraded copy, and 10s are going for like $250 maybe. So this set has also crashed big time. It is way overhyped when it came out, and because it was a mini set, most of the cards in this were pretty easy to get. Most people were able to complete this set with only opening up a little bit of cards. It was just those two cards that ended up being the problem children. Now, because it is a Zard set, I think it will have a little bit of, the Zards will carry it, but I don't see things like Gardevoir carrying it, or, Lucario V or anything like that. So I think this set is going to be solidly placed, where the heck is it, right here, in a C tier, but I would put it slightly above Rebel Clash, just because the Zardy boys are going to carry it a lot. Zards always do in Pokemon. Now we are on to Vivid Voltage. Now, Vivid Voltage, I actually really like this set. I loved the Amazing Rares. I wish they had done more. They only did a couple sets with these Amazing Rares. This looks so much better in person because all of this is textured and patterned. Luckily, the Amazing Rares were pretty easy to pull, and they're pretty cheap, so if you want to get some beautiful cards, that's a good way to do it. But you have a lot of big cards in this one that will help pull this one up. You have the Pikachu VMAX, and considering it's one of only two sets with Amazing Rares, that will over time make it a little more special, unless they bring Amazing Rares back at any point. You have the Pikachu V here, you have the Ampharos, the Alakazam, the Steelix, the Togekiss, a Geoslash, you had Bay, you had Nessa, you had Leon. There's a lot of fan favorite cards in this set for the waifu hunters. You had like Pokemon Center Lady and stuff like that. Overall, this set is a pretty good set. I love that it had Obstagoon. I have one in my Sword and Shield game called Neon. I love that card. But yeah, this one's going to be a solid set in the future. It also was not printed into Oblivion like the previous sets. For Sword and Shield and Rebel Clash, Champion's Path was a special set, so it's a special kind of exception there. But Vivid Voltage, solidly B tier, and it will probably remain there for a while. Pikachu's very popular, and it's maintained some pretty good prices over the years. It didn't explode super high and then crash like a lot of them. It kind of exploded, came down a little bit, and it stayed. But it stayed pretty high for years after the fact, so I think Vivid Voltage belongs in the B tier here. Now Shining Fates. Oh my gosh, Shining Fates. I have just the worst luck with these sets, primarily with the baby shinies. Now, Shining Fates did have some more Amazing Rares in it, and it is a very massive set, but the problem is it is a very hard set to collect. You also had Skyla here. That's going to have some long-term value here. Stop telling me to translate stuff to Danish. I hate when computer does that crap. I need to disable all that. But the baby shinies were relatively hard to pull. One in every like 5 to 6 packs you get a baby shiny. And the reason why these were so hard to pull and complete is look how many there are. Some of the baby shinies have jumped in price. Others have stayed very low. Most of these are going to be sub $5. And they haven't really changed. All right, how do I disable this? Okay, I did it. So anyway, this set has a lot of lower tier cards that are kind of hard to pull out of packs, but I just don't see many of these baby shinies gaining huge popularity over time. You might have a couple here and there that pop off, but most of these are going to be pretty cheap. Most of them are pretty easy to find even today. It's just they're pulling them out of packs was a pain. That may cause them to go up in the future. But you did have a lot of cool cards in this. The problem is pretty much only one carries it, and it's the Charizard. And this one also saw a meteoric rise when it first came out, and it's plummeted ever since. Look, TCG players even got it sub 100 now, and these are some old prices where it used to be at, because it's definitely not there anymore. I bought a PSA 10 of this for $125, So yeah, this card I don't think is going to be enough to carry the set overall, but it does have a lot. So it's probably going to remain one of those sets like Hidden Fates where there's a lot to it in order to collect, but no card in it is like super, super high, except for maybe one or two. Also, I think the Ditto was the best card in this set. I mean, just look at that blue boy. Love it. So yeah, I would put Shining Fates solidly in the B tier, but under Vivid Voltage. I think it has the potential to surpass Vivid Voltage just overall because there's so many ultra rares in it. But I don't see it being like through the roof expensive in years to come. It was also printed quite a bit in comparison to Hidden Fates, and yeah, that's kind of where I would put that one. Next up is Battle Styles. Now, Battle Styles was the first set to bring back the alt arts and was very hard to collect the alt arts. The alt arts have the same pull rates as the old school gold stars from back in the day, basically 1 to 2 per case. You're barely ever going to find these. You're barely ever going to get these. These cards are beautiful. They're iconic. The only problem with Battle Styles is Battle Styles was printed into oblivion in comparison to other sets. It had a total of only a total of only a total of 6 alt arts. The biggest ones were this Urshifu, which has crashed tremendously in price. This is very cheap now. I suggest you guys look into that. And the T-Tar, those were the two big ones from this one. The T-Tar has maintained basically the prices it came out. I think the highest price I ever saw of it on release was like $200, but it floats between about 80 to 100 right now. And this one was like at 200 as well, and now it's like down to 50, 60, 70 maybe. This was a really cool set overall. You also have Shiny Houndoom in here. You have Cheryl, Karina's Focus for all the waifu cards. Lots of rainbows, lots to collect in this. I think it's going to be, as a reintroduction to the alt arts, it's going to be a solid set in the future. Problem is it was printed, so that's going to knock it down some. So I'm going to put this solidly at B tier and right around Vivid Voltage. Again, any of these could switch places in B tier, but definitely a good release. I loved this set. It had a lot of playable cards too. The Urshifu dominated in the TCG. So this has a lot of room to move. The problem is it just hasn't done anything since it released much. Chilling Reign, Chilling Pain. So, there's a reason why this thing is called Chilling Pain. The pull rates on this suck more than any other Sword and Shield set other than like Evolving Skies. You cannot pull anything out of this set to save your life. Trust me, I opened up so much to do a master set for this, and I'm at like 70%, and I gave up on it because I could not pull a thing out of this one. This one also has the second most alt arts in the Sword and Shield era and is largely a sleeper set right now. Rocking a solid 13 alternate art cards, more than triple that of Battle Styles previous. A lot more full arts, a lot more rainbows, a lot more trainers. I mean, this set is just filled to the brim with hits, and you can't pull any of them. This set has recently gone up for its sealed prices. The single cards have stayed a little bit low or have kind of lowered from their all-time highs, like the Zera Aura. I think I bought a PSA 10 for 120. Now they're going for about 80. Some of the cards in here have come down for it, but a couple cards in here are kind of like, staying pretty high, like Galarian Moltres here. It's stayed very high since release. The Blaziken VMAX also has stayed very high since release. This set has been one of the few sets that's kind of maintained prices over the last few years, with only a couple kind of going down a little bit. There are still some very cheap alt arts in it, like this Blissey. I think the highest thing I ever got was $25. Now it's 16, 17, so not horrible there. And yeah, there are tons of full art trainers in here. These trainers have jumped up with the waifu craze that happened in recent years. So I think this set's going to be, honestly, probably one of the top sets. You also have the big boy Snorlax, which has actually come down in price a little bit. But this one's a big chase for a lot of people because there are very few shiny Snorlax cards. This was just a really solid set, and I think a lot of people are sleeping on it, and I think this is probably going to be ones that have like the biggest price jumps in the future. So I'm going to put Chilling Reign solidly at S. Even though its pull rate sucked and I hated opening it, in the future, that's going to be one of the top sets in the Sword and Shield era that people are going to look back on and go, oh yeah, this has the second most alt arts. Oh yeah, it's incredibly hard to pull things out of it. Oh yeah, it's got a lot of fan favorites. This one is probably going to be one of the ones that's very sought after in the future. Now the big boy, Evolving Skies. So Evolving Skies had very similar pull rates in terms in comparison to Chilling Reign. Although I find Evolving Skies a little easier than Chilling Reign. I know a lot of people may not say that; they'll call it Evolving Cries. But Evolving Skies is the top tier set of Sword and Shield, and it has maintained tremendously good prices. Now things are coming down because it was way overhyped for a while. The Moonbryon is going to probably be the biggest card of the biggest set of Sword and Shield. This card's all-time high was $1,500, and now it's back down to like 700 something for PSA 10s. This card is definitely overgraded, but it is very popular, and a lot of people want it, and a lot of people still don't have it. So it's probably going to remain the biggest card of the series. You had all the other evolutions. You had, I think, a total of 17 alt arts. This one was personally my favorite. I love this Rayquaza, and I'm so glad it's dropped in price a little bit, because it used to be about like 150 for this thing, and now it's come down to like 70, 80. I need to get this as a 10. I have one as an 8.5, but beautiful card. Beautiful artworks. You have Rayquaza, you have the evolutions, you have tons of alt arts, you have Gyarados in here, you have Zinnia, Aroma Lady, you have Duraludon, Noivern. I mean, this thing is just stacked. The golds are not as impressive in this set. They should have done like a gold Rayquaza, and then this thing would have been through the roof. But yeah, all of these cards, all of these alt arts are in the hundreds of dollars, and they haven't fluctuated much over the years. When they first came out, they were, well, no, when they first came out, they were lower. Then they got overhyped. Now they've come down a little bit, but they're still higher than anything else. And I mean, like, even these full arts, while have dropped in price a little bit, are not inexpensive compared to other sets full arts. I mean, this Espeon right here is more than a single card out of Darkness Ablaze. So it's definitely a good set. Evolving Skies is going to be up here. I think the sealed prices on it are a little too high right now, but it's probably going to be the king, absolutely, of the Sword and Shield era. Celebrations was one of the most fun sets. I really love this little mini set. It was fun to open. It was fun to pull. They didn't print as much of it as I thought they were going to. The reprints were great. A lot of these cards we haven't seen in like 20 plus years. I mean, like Gym Challenge Zapdos here. Yeah, it's been a long time since we've seen Rocket Zapdos or Shining Magikarp. There's very few cards that get reprinted in Pokemon, mostly the base set stuff. So, I mean, like this, yeah. I mean, I love this set. In terms of long-term value, it's not that hard of a set to collect. Obviously, you have the Zard reprint, which okay, the price charting on this is all over the damn place. It's got a base set Zard instead of the collector Zard when I click on it. That's interesting. But yeah, this set was a fun set. I think it will do well. It's also got Shiny Mew in here, which has dropped in price pretty significantly, but this set's gonna have some legs just for the wow factor and the fun factor and the nostalgia factor. So I'm going to put Celebration solidly at an A. Super easy set to collect, but as time goes on, if people are sleeping on it because it's too easy or they don't think there's a lot of value in it, it wasn't reprinted as much as some of the other sets in this list. So I would say it's going to have a little bit of fun in the future. So next up is Fusion Strike. Now this one I'm a little mixed on with Fusion Strike. I can happily report that I'm almost done with the Master Set with this one. This was the biggest set by far of the Sword and Shield era, 284 cards. It had a bunch of alt arts, but not near the same amount as Chilling Reign or Evolving Skies. But it did have alt arts such as Celebi V here, which is super cheap. I love that this card is cheap because it's beautiful. I have like 3 of them. You had Genesect, you had the Mew. The Mews were what really carried this, and this set was way more TCG relevant than some of its predecessors, just because of the Mew VMAX. I mean, I think this went to Worlds. I think this was one of the Worlds decks, was Mew VMAX. You also have the Gengar in here, which was really cool, and then they randomly threw the Espeon in this set, whereas we thought this was going to come out as a promo or an Evolving Skies, and they randomly threw out this one. Fusion Strike has largely kept its prices over time. The Gengar has dropped a little bit from its all-time. I think its all-time was like 200, and now you can get it, sub 150 if you're lucky. But this set's going to have some legs. This set's going to be really good. It's got alt arts, it's got rainbows. It's a little easier to collect than the other sets, which is both a good and a bad thing in terms of looking at like prices and all that kind of stuff. But I think it's a solid set. I'm just mixed on where. This is the one thing I don't know where to put on this list, because I could see it going to S just because of the popularity of Mew. If you guys didn't know, Mew is the third most popular Pokemon. It goes Charizard, Pikachu, Mew. But I definitely think it's above something like Celebrations. I just don't know if it's on the same tier as these two. Because yes, it's got 3 or 4 really big cards in it, but it doesn't have 17 big cards in it. It doesn't have 14 big cards in it. So I would probably put it right here at A, and it would be the top of A. I think it's going to have the most price jumps in the future in comparison to like Shining Fates, Vivid Voltage, all that kind of stuff. Fusion Strike's just a real fun set too. Now we're into Brilliant Stars and Brilliant Stars Trainer Gallery. So Brilliant Stars is a fun set. I really like it, and I feel like this set wasn't printed as much as some of the other ones before it. It's got big ones in it like Charizard, Alt Art Charizard, which is a beautiful card. It's got another one which is one of my all-time favorites, the Arceus. It's got things like the Rainbow Arceus. It's got a couple good rainbows in here. It's got a couple really good, it's got the birds and the gold Arceus there. Honestly, it's just a solid set. I see it making some moves and some jumps in the future. Right now, a lot of it is very cheap, and then its trainer gallery is also pretty solid. You have Flareon, Vaporeon, Jolteon. You also have Houndoom. You have Sylveon, Sylveon VMAX. You have the 2 Mimikyus, which, by the way, this in Japanese is like very expensive. You have the 2 Umbreons, the 2 Urshifus. This trainer gallery is very stacked full of stuff. You have Eevee. I mean, this trainer gallery is pretty damn good. I would say that Brilliant Stars is solidly going to go into A tier. It's not going to be quite the top tier, but it's probably going to be above Fusion Strike in the long term, or right with Fusion Strike in the long term, just with the cards that are in this set. Astral Radiance, oh boy, this was another set that I gave up collecting. I couldn't pull. So other people say that this set's fine to pull stuff out of. I couldn't pull a damn thing. I hate this set. I mean, I love this set. It's got a lot of cool stuff in it, but I just had to buy the ultra rares and call it good because this set beat the crap out of me. And this is another example of a set that started off very, very high, and a lot of cards dropped quickly. People quickly forget that this Beedrill here was $140 on release. Now it's like $15. And for an alt art, that is dirt cheap, especially for one so beautiful. The only one that has really maintained high prices is the Machamp, and even this is probably half of what it was on release. So Astral Radiance has a lot in it, but I don't know how much it has in terms of legs to collect and popular cards that people want. You've got Machamp, you've got Typhlosion, you've got the Dialga and the Palkia, but all of these alt arts are pretty cheap and have basically been dropping in price ever since release. This Irida is probably the only card in the set that has actually increased significantly in price, going from $5 to $20. And I don't know if this set's going to have good long-term value. It may be because of how big it is, because it is 216 cards. It is slightly bigger than some of the other ones. And it also has a pretty decent trainer gallery. But really and truly, the biggest one in the trainer galleries here are going to be the Starmie and the Garchomp. And the Garchomp's all has fallen in price too. This one's another tough one. This one I don't know the direction it's going to go. Because it's not a set that I collected heavily. And I don't know if people are going to be going crazy in 10 years over Sneasler V, or going to be going crazy over, Hisuian Lilligant V. Even though these things are freaking impossible to pull, I don't know if they're going to have that kind of pull in the future from people. The Garchomp's super low. I'm going to put Astral Radiance on the lower end of A tier. It has room to move because of all the alt arts in it, but it just seems to not want to move in people's collections. I just don't see a lot of people collecting these things or going after them. Even, again, most of the waifu cards and a lot of the cards that you would think would be super popular here are still dirt cheap for it. It also is a more recent release, so it may just need a little more time. But because of all the alt arts, it does have room to go crazy. So we'll see what happens on this one. I'm going to put it in A tier. It has room to move down to B, but it could, or up in A, but time is just going to have to tell with this one. It could crash just as easily as it could rise. Pokemon Go! Fun little set here. I liked this set. This was probably the #1 popular set with kiddos. The kiddos loved this set because they played Pokemon Go on their phones, so they wanted to get these in their hands. This set was fantastic. This was the set I would give out free packs to the kiddos out there. The Radiants in here are all pretty solid. A lot of them are very cheap right now, which is nice. The Dragonite is in here. The Mewtwo V Alt Art is in here. But this set was very easy to collect. In other words, you could pull a lot of stuff out of Pokemon Go without really trying. A single booster box would get you most of the set. It's another mini set. But again, Dragonite, Mewtwo, Radiance, Shinies are the starters. Conkeldurr V, the cheapest alt art ever to exist. Like, seriously, I think that's sub $1 now. It's super low, but yeah, I think this set's solid. I would definitely probably put it above Champion's Path, but it would go on like the bottom of B tier. People are gonna want to open it just for the fun of it because it is a Pokemon Go related set, but it was super easy to pull. They printed a decent amount of it. I don't think it's going to have huge legs in the beginning, but over time. But it's a fun little set. Lost Origin is another one that's kind of difficult for me to place right now. So Lost Origin really has one big hit card, and that's the Giratina. It only has 4 alt arts in it, and the Aerodactyl V, the Giratina, and the Berserker and Rotom. The Berserker and Rotom have dropped fairly significantly in price. Their PSA 10s are still staying pretty high because barely anybody has graded these in comparison. Aerodactyl V has lost a little bit in price, and then Giratina V has stayed very, very big in terms of its price. It's stayed close to release. It's got a lot of really good rainbows in it, a lot of TCG meta rainbows that people will remember. It's also got the gold Giratina, which, that one's actually dropped in price a little bit too, just from those price estimates. It's a solid set. The problem is, it looks like really only 2 cards are carrying it, the Aerodactyl and the Giratina. I don't know if that's going to be enough to bring this set into the future, but Giratina, this style of card is very popular. In fact, this style of card from this illustrator has brought up the price of the Magikarp from Paldea Evolved because it's that style, and there's only been like 2 or 3 styles that he's done. So this card is going to remain a big card in the Sword and Shield era, probably in the top 5. I just don't know if the entire set will go along with it. In terms of the trainer gallery, you have the Pikachu V, the Pikachu V Max, solid. You have the Eternatus, which is solid, the Nessa, the Pikachu, the Mew, the Charizard, the Gengar, the other Pikachu, the Snorlax. This is probably one of the better, if not one of the best, trainer galleries in it. So I'm going to put Lost Origin right up here. I would put it slightly above Celebrations. I just don't know if it's going to jump. Some of these other cards got to get a little popular than just the Giratina. I mean, the Pikachu is at dirt cheap right now, even though it's pretty hard to pull. Same with the Mew. I'm not sure on Lost Origin yet. It's going to need some more time. Silver Tempest, the Lugia set. So, also had only a few alt arts, just like Lost Origin, and there really is only maybe 1 or 2 cards that are pulling this set. The Lugia V here, and, well, I was going to say the Regidrago, but after I clicked on it, the Regidrago is apparently plummeted in price, so I probably overpaid for that when I bought it. But, yeah, there's not a lot that are, like, big hitter cards in this. Basically, every card is the biggest card is around $100 right now, $150. So, this set, I think, has some room to grow. But there were also some release problems with this set. For those who know, there were certain things where you could buy these sleeved booster cases where every sleeve was a guaranteed hit. There were a lot of these printed. There was also a collector's chest where every Silver Tempest pack was a guaranteed hit. I think that's probably going to be bad long term for the set. I don't know on the total scale that those were released, but there were a lot of them. I just think it's a solid set. I just don't think it's going to go crazy in the future like some of the other ones. I would put it at B. I'd probably put it above Battle Styles just for nostalgia's sake and just for, like, Lugia. That's about it. And last but not least, Crown Zenith. So Crown Zenith, I think, is a sleeper set right now. And I think people are vastly underestimating Crown Zenith and what it has to offer. The main set is not much to look at here. You have Pikachu, you have Rayquaza VMAX, the Zacian V-Star. The mainline set for this is just not much in general. You have a Charizard, but there's not a lot that's really, like, big in this set that people were chasing until you get to the Galarian Gallery. And the Galarian Gallery is stacked. The Galarian Gallery is its own category of itself. You have the 9 matching cards here of the baby Pokemon. You have Entei, you have Suicune, you have Raikou, you have Zeraora, you have this Mewtwo here, which is a very big card. You have the 4 Golds, which I personally think are some of the best cards we've ever gotten in Pokemon. These cards are stunning, and you really have to get them in your hand to see how beautiful they are. They are just beautiful cards. Giratina, I think, is the biggest right now, or Arceus. Let's see how they're doing. Yeah, Giratina's outpacing the Arceus. This Galarian Gallery, because it's different from trainer galleries, is probably one of the best things about the set, and I think a lot of people are sleeping on Crown Zenith right now. A lot of the prices have dropped on it, and typically when you get to the end of an era for Pokemon, the last set is very well remembered, but not well received. Think about Cosmic Eclipse. When Cosmic Eclipse came out, nobody gave a damn. Then, 4 years later, everybody wanted Cosmic Eclipse. Why? Because it was the last thing in Sun and Moon. The same thing can be said with other sets, such as Evolutions in the X and Y. Evolutions, when this thing came out, Evolutions was just... it was a reprint set for 5 years. Nobody wanted this. It was junk. It was always on the store shelves. Then when the boom happened, everybody wanted Evolutions, but nobody wanted Steam Siege, even though Steam Siege was older and less printed than Evolutions. So the last set in a series typically denotes a higher interest, at least in recent years. I can't really claim that for things like Diamond and Pearl Stormfront or Platinum Arceus. Well, I could claim that for Platinum Arceus. Definitely claim that for Platinum Arceus. But Heart Gold, Soul Silver, Triumphant, all of these are kind of the same. So yeah, I would say that people are sleeping on Crown Zenith. I would say that the prices are super low. And I would say that Crown Zenith is going to have legs, and it's going to be right up here in the S tier. Crown Zenith is going to be a big set 5-10 years down the road because of all the crazy hits in it. And I feel like people have just kind of forgotten it and sidelined it. And I mean, you're not going to get cards that look like this for a minute. I mean, Deoxys has not had a lot of reprints. Deoxys traditionally does very, very well. Or just prints in general, I should say, not reprints. These cards, they're relatively easy to pull. They're not like alt arts, I'll give them that. But these are similar to the alt arts, and this style of card is the only time these cards have come out as well. These gold painting panoramic god cards, I don't even know what to call them. But, yeah, this one's gonna be a sleeper. People are sleeping on this one, and I think it's gonna have legs in the future. So that would kind of be my tier list. You got Evolving Skies, Chilling Reign, and Crown Zenith on top. I think those are gonna be the best moving forward. Brilliant Stars, Fusion Strike, Lost Origin, Celebrations, Astral Radiance are kind of in the A tier. Astral's the only one that I could maybe move down to B here. Celebrations, because of how easy it is to collect, could move down here, but Celebration was a very beloved set and will probably remain so. Silver Tempest, Battle Styles, Vivid Voltage, Shining Fates, and Pokemon Go, solid B tier. They could move up a little bit here and there, but I don't see these sets going hugely crazy outside of a few individual cards in the future. C tier is Sword and Shield, Champions Path, Rebel Clash. Nobody remembers these. This one's probably the most egregious, but just because it has 2 Zards, it's slightly better than something like Darkness Ablaze, which is just dirt cheap. Darkness Ablaze is probably one of the worst releases in a minute for Sword and Shield era or in Pokemon in general. This set just sucked. But yeah, that's my tier list. So let me know what you guys think. This was my first long format video here on YouTube. I'm just going to be talking about things like this. Again, I am not always 100% on this. I'm just kind of talking from experience here, talking from what I think. There is any number of things that can make anything in these sets go crazy for no reason, such as the full art trainers that I mentioned in the beginning. Let me know down in the comments what your tier list would be. If you think I'm right, if you think I'm wrong, I would love to hear it. And yeah, I'll see you goofballs in the next one. Peace out.